American police use field sobriety tests that don't work. They can't tell the difference between drunk and sober, drugs and no drugs. American prosecutors use these tests to convict innocent people, mostly for drugs. I'm the principal author of a scientific study that calculated the accuracy of American law enforcement's Standardized Field Sobriety Test. Our study was published by Oxford University Press. The link below this video takes you to the study. I'm a medical doctor who's authored scientific papers in the field. I'll teach you the science. When it comes to law talking, you shouldn't believe a thing I say. I certainly don't. We analyzed the data that police and prosecutors use to validate their sobriety test. Here's a screenshot. HTNI test, one-leg stand and walk and turn test scores for about 300 drivers, each matched with the actual blood alcohol levels for the same drivers. So the data matches sobriety test scores with alcohol levels. Here's the question. When drunk people take the test and sober people take the test, are the answers different? When drunks take the test, they all fail, 100%. When sober people take the test, they also fail. If the test worked, they would pass. They don't. The test is wrong 3 times out of 4. NHTSA's official validation data shows that when experienced DUI officers administer the SFST in the field to real drivers, real sober drivers, in real DUI investigations, the answer the test gives is wrong 3 times out of 4. The problem is not the driver. The problem is the test. The test says people are drunk when they're not. The test is wrong. The test makes mistakes a lot. That's what the science says. When drunk people take the test, they always fail. When sober people take the test, they usually fail. The test can't tell the difference. So now, in court, when the defendant failed the Standardized Field Sobriety Test, the question is, how come did she fail? Was she drunk? Or was she just one of those big majority of sober people for whom the test gives the wrong answer? Could be either one. The test can't tell the difference. And that's the point. The results of a Standardized Field Sobriety Test can't tell you whether the person was drunk or sober. That's what the science says. What about in the field? Officers do sobriety tests, and most of the people they arrest for DUI do have a high blood alcohol. Most of the people arrested for DUI have a high blood alcohol level. Yes, they do, but you haven't heard the whole story. Officers also have portable breath test machines that measure the driver's alcohol level right at the roadside before any arrest. So when the sobriety test wrongly says a sober person is drunk, the breath test machine gives the officer the true answer, and the person isn't arrested. So before DUI cases even get to court, alcohol tests, blood or breath, rescue innocent people from sobriety test mistakes and false convictions. Good. That's good. Here's a question. Police don't really need sobriety tests because they have a machine that measures alcohol at the roadside. And anyway, sobriety tests can't help police tell the difference between drunk and sober. So how come do they do them? Why do police do standardized field sobriety tests? Police do sobriety tests because they work in court. Traffic police are trained to tell jurors the tests are 91% accurate. That's not true, but it makes for great evidence. Testimony about sobriety tests helps prosecutors convict people. That's why police do them. Our Oxford study reported the scientific accuracies of the Standardized Field Sobriety Test. This number tells you that guilty people fail. This number tells you that most, 3 out of 4, sober people also fail. The number 1.35 confirms that the test is worthless and shouldn't be used. So I told you American prosecutors use sobriety tests to convict innocent people, mostly for drugs. Marijuana is a good example. In a lot of states it's illegal. It's illegal, so drivers don't mind admitting they smoked yesterday. What's not legal is smoking and driving right away under the influence. The policeman's task in a traffic stop would be to tell the difference, if that were possible. The alcohol test, the Standardized Field Sobriety Test that 3 out of 4 sober people fail, it also doesn't work for marijuana. That's because sober is sober. Sober marijuana is the same as sober alcohol. How about a sobriety test that does work for marijuana? Well, the American law enforcement sobriety tests are controlled by an outfit called the International Association of Chiefs of Police. Here's what their internal documents say about sobriety tests for marijuana. There aren't any. Notice the date. American police have been telling juries they have a scientific test for drunk driving for 50 years, convicting people for 50 years, putting some of them in prison with a test they know doesn't work. There is no valid, reliable, scientific sobriety test for marijuana impairment. Alcohol blood tests rescue people from sobriety test mistakes. That's because alcohol levels correlate with how impaired a person is. Marijuana levels don't. Marijuana tests can't save innocent people from sobriety test mistakes, and that's true for other drugs as well. So what do police do? They do the alcohol test and pretend it works for marijuana. and they add a second sobriety test that they made up themselves. They call it the drug influence evaluation. It's got 12 steps. Towards the end, at step 11, based on the medical knowledge he learned in traffic school, the policeman forms the opinion that the driver was impaired by a drug belonging to one of several categories the policeman made up. And the driver does have a blood test done, a toxicology test. Excellent. When the blood test shows the drug, that's definitive proof of guilt, right? Unfortunately, no. Alcohol and drugs are different. Alcohol levels correlate with impairment, but drug levels generally don't. People who smoke marijuana on Monday will still have marijuana in their blood on Tuesday or Wednesday. So scientifically, it's not possible to set a legal limit for drug levels in driving. And that's not just me saying this. The IACP admits it. When police have a toxicology report showing the presence of a drug, that doesn't prove the driver was guilty. Traffic police and prosecutors have made up a theory to fix this problem. This is a little convoluted, so pay attention. They say, look, the policeman did a physical exam that led him to believe the driver was impaired, and it led him to believe that the impairment was caused by a particular type of drug. Policeman thinks impaired, policeman thinks caused by a particular type of drug. Those are the facts the theory is built on. Here's the theory. If a drug of that type is found, then the officer's opinions must be true. I mean, come on, how else could the officer have made that amazing prediction? So in American courts, to convict people of drug driving, what prosecutors look for is a match between the officer's prediction and the toxicology report. Prosecutors use that match to put people in prison. This theory leaves out one tiny detail. Step 10, the officer asks the driver, what drugs have you been using? Step 11, the officer predicts what drugs she has been using. Step 12, the blood test shows what drugs she has been using. The sobriety test for alcohol doesn't work. There is no sobriety test for marijuana. When police arrest someone for marijuana-impaired driving, they cannot have used a sobriety test to identify that impairment because that sobriety test doesn't exist. That's not me talking, that's their own internal documents. Police find drivers with marijuana in their blood by asking, have you been using marijuana? Same for other drugs. Having taken a drug sometime in the past, not the same as being impaired by that drug. The answers, I smoked yesterday and I smoked an hour ago, both let the officer know the driver has marijuana in her blood, and now he knows he can get a conviction, but one driver's guilty and the other's innocent. The officer's task should be to tell the difference, but there is no sobriety test that can do that. There is no sobriety test for marijuana. There is no PBT for marijuana, and the marijuana blood test can't rescue the innocent driver. When these cases get to court, the fact that will clinch the convictions will be the officer's ability to administer a sobriety test made up by a traffic policeman and to predict the drug the driver confessed to. American prosecutors routinely and systematically use sobriety tests to convict innocent people. Drivers who answer, I'm high on meth, are guilty. Drivers are at risk when they tell officers about their prescriptions of a stable medicine monitored by their doctor. When their blood test proves the prescribed medicine is present at medically approved levels, or even lower at levels not high enough to be medically effective, they're still likely to be convicted because, after all, the officer did a sobriety test and predicted the drug they told him about. American prosecutors routinely and systematically use sobriety tests to convict innocent people. Do you care that Americans are routinely falsely convicted for misdemeanor marijuana-impaired driving? How about innocent people who end up with life-changing prison terms for vehicular homicide they didn't commit? American sobriety tests don't work.